Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzo, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matano, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to something else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome to episode number 100 of Something Else. It is episode number 100 for those of you, unlike me, who actually say the number out loud. Feast your hair holes on this week's episode as we're taking a look at Star Wars. No, not that Star Wars. We're taking a look at World Class Championship Wrestling, the International Wrestling Star Wars from 41 years ago-ish. It was, what was it? Was it June 16th or June 17th, 19th? Actually, June 18th. I know,
17th.
I'm sorry. I was right the second time or the first time. June 17th, 1983. My name is Arya, and joining me, as he has for each of the last 7 episodes, I think, is the Mark Lawrence to my Bill Mercer. It's Trae. Trae, how you doing today?
Why do I have to be Mark Lawrence?
Because I'm the leader of the show, so I'm Bill Mercer. Would you rather be the empty chair next to Bill Mercer? Would you rather be Bill Mercer, the ringside observer, as opposed to Bill Mercer, the play-by-play announcer?
I don't know.
Okay. So, yeah, this is our 100th episode, and today it's no Mid-South. We're recapping World Class Star Wars, and next week we're going to do 2 episodes of Mid-South to basically catch up on everything. Now, the next 2 episodes of the World Class show that we've been following along on Peacock, it's just recapping Star Wars. So basically, we're doing 2 episodes of World Class here, inside of 1 Star Wars, and then we'll do the 2 Mid-South next week.
With some bonuses there on Japanese TV.
Yes, and that will make things interesting. Now, obviously, a lot has changed since episode number 00. Well, actually, 000. Essentially, I can't keep actual track of how many episodes I've really done because we did a preview episode 2 years ago talking about pineapple on pizza, which is still getting people to debate. By the way, Trae, pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
It's I've tried it. It's okay. It's not my favorite thing, but I certainly think that everybody should eat whatever they want.
That is a good answer. Good answer. If this was Family Feud, everyone would be yelling good answer.
Yeah.
So obviously in the past 170 shows or however many I've actually done, I've dropped a co-host. I've added a new co-host. I've actually added 2 new co-hosts. And I spent a lot of time talking to myself, so I'm happy that I have someone to bounce this shit off of. Now, the original gimmick of this show, if you recall, was, we constantly had guests on who knew nothing about wrestling. It was the weirdest wrestling podcast ever because we never had any wrestling guests. I think it wasn't until like episode 80 or so when we did New England Fan Fest that I actually had guests that were involved in wrestling. And speaking of which, I want to give a shout out to one of the people in that little intro we do every week, Rich Palladino, the voice of New England wrestling. He's going through some tough times mental health wise. So if you want to throw him some love up on Twitter, He's a great announcer, and hopefully he gets the chance to show the world how great of an announcer he is. But yeah, it's Rich Palladino on Twitter. And like I said, show him some love because he deserves it.
Best wishes to Rich Palladino.
Yes. Now, it's funny because when I did that intro, they're talking about the guests that we've had over the years. It might make people think that I was about to announce we're going to have a guest. We're not. Unless you consider Trae a guest, in which case we have a guest every week.
I'm like, I'm that friend that's over at your house so often you don't even consider me company anymore. I'm just there.
I have been that friend before. But yeah, at this point, Trae's not a guest. He's full-blown co-host. And of course, if you're listening to us for the first time ever, first of all, why? We've got 99 other episodes to listen to. But Trae joins us on Tuesdays for normally Mid-South and World Class, and he joins us Thursdays for Smoky Mountain. Wednesdays, I'm joined by my other new co-host, Cindy, where we discuss NWA Total Nonstop Action, the weekly pay-per-views. The first episode was last Wednesday. The second episode is tomorrow. Check them out. And if you don't, I'll shake my fist at you, whatnot.
Yeah.
But anywho, let's dive into things here. It is World Class. It had like 75 different names over the past 2 months because I got into the habit of calling it the Greatest International Star Wars because that's what they first called it. And they basically settled on International Wrestling Star Wars. But it's from
I go with what they introduced the show as.
Yeah. So June 17th, 1983 from Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas. Now let me ask you, they didn't say it was Reunion Arena. Could you have told the difference between there and the Sportatorium?
I could tell that it wasn't the Sportatorium, but I couldn't have told you it was Reunion Arena.
Honestly, I thought that they looked remarkably similar. And normally that is a 2024 thing where every arena looks exactly the same. And, but I honestly was surprised how similar that this looked. Because when they were at, oh my God, I think it was the Rodeo Arena where they did the Ric Flair Kevin Von Erich match that set up the match that didn't happen on this show. It was obviously different. It just looked and felt completely different. And I didn't really get that feeling here at Reunion. But
just wait till we get to the Cotton Bowl and Texas Stadium and all that.
Yes, if I can't tell the difference between the Sportatorium and Texas Stadium, please just cut the show off and don't let me record anymore.
Yeah.
So the feed I saw, and I'm assuming it's the feed Trae saw, was the one that someone uploaded onto YouTube because I guess there was never an official release of this. So it's essentially the 2 back-to-back episodes of World Class, along with somebody getting the Japanese feed and dropping in the missing matches. So we have the full card. It leads to weird things like Bill Mercer doing an intro talking about how we have a double main event of Jimmy Garvin versus David Von Erich and Buddy Roberts versus Iceman Parsons in the hair match, which is the 2 matches before intermission.
There's also on TV they aired the David and Jimmy Garvin match before the Buddy Roberts King Parsons match, and so
Yes.
so during the hair versus hair match, Bill Mercer mentions that they've already had a reversal of decision in the Texas Heavyweight Championship,
Even though we hadn't yet seen it.
Yeah. And also, so I know almost everything aired on World Class TV over the next 2 weeks. So there were the 3 matches that aired on Japanese TV. The women's match definitely aired, but it didn't air the first 2 weeks, so I don't know where that came from, unless they're going to air it just randomly in one of the upcoming weeks.
Well, it'll be like in the middle of November, and suddenly, let's go back to Reunion Arena for the Mexican National Women's Title match.
Yeah.
Lola Gonzalez versus Vicky Carzana. think. Just like they said her name.
Carranza.
Carranza. Sorry.
Vicky Carranza.
But that's not our opener. Our opener, and we're going to go straight to Japan for this one because I'm assuming it never aired in the United States, or if it did, we just, enjoy airing the Japanese announcing of this. It's Tenryu versus Johnny Mantell.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if Tenryu was necessarily a heel, but he did get booed. I think it's mostly because, it's 1983. It's Texas. Of course, the wrestler from Japan is the heel.
He's foreign, and Johnny Mantell is technically a babyface.
Yep. Now, I didn't quite make out what Mark Lawrence said because the Japanese announcers were rudely talking over him. But it sounded to me like they called him Tenryu Shibata, which can't be true.
I heard something Shimada, which like his real name is Genichiro Shimada.
Okay.
And
so maybe that's what they were calling him.
So what I'm guessing is that like somebody told the ring announcer was like, "Hey, I need to know this guy's name," and then they just looked at the paperwork and said, "Oh, it's something Shimada." So maybe that's what happened.
Well, I noted that this match was not going the 10-minute time limit, and it turns out the reason why it wasn't going the 10-minute time limit was because it had a 15-minute time limit.
Yeah.
This was definitely a 1980s live event opener. Nowadays, the opening match of the show can be considered one of the more important matches on the card. But back in my day, kid, the opener was just there to warm the crowd up. You get a lot of holds, maybe a high spot or two, but it was there to get the crowd in their seats. And honestly, that didn't really change until pay-per-view became a thing because, they'd want people in their seats by the start time. So they tell you, it starts 15 to 30 minutes early, and then send out Sam Houston versus Barry Horowitz as a dark match.
A lot of territories, the opening match in the house shows will be a 20-minute draw.
Yeah. Like, watch any of those WWF house shows on Peacock. I mean, I haven't watched every single one, but I guarantee 90% of them the opener is ending in a time limit draw.
Yeah.
And they're just as exciting as a 20-minute time limit draw between Sam Houston and Barry Horowitz sounds like it would be. And I don't know why I'm picking those two people out because there were tons of people in that position. But anyway,
I met Johnny Mantell several years ago, and I lament that I didn't know about this match then, because then I could have been a weirdo and asked him about this and nothing else about his career. Although, did you know, I didn't realize until I looked it up, he worked both New Japan and All Japan?
Johnny Mantell?
Yeah, he did New Japan in 78, 79, and 80. All Japan in 84, and New Japan again in 86.
You could knock me over with a feather, because I never would have guessed that he did much of anything, to be honest.
This wasn't Japanese, and I'm so disappointed that I didn't get to hear Bill Mercer call a Tenryu match.
Oh boy, can you imagine? But they
Tenryu,
did.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say they did the 10-minute call, and this match was feeling every second of 10 minutes. The finish, Mantell goes for a monkey flip, but gets forearmed and then pinned after a falling elbow drop from the top rope.
Yeah, I popped for that just because that's the elbow that Shingo Takagi always does as like an homage to Tenryu. He also does Tenryu's punches, which are great. Tenryu would become one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, but like by the late 80s and through the 90s and into the 2000s. This was just a match. Okay, we all know grumpy old man Tenryu is best Tenryu. When he was like in his 50s and wrestling, like he was freelancing because War had died, and he was wrestling like a young Tanahashi and Shibata and Nakamura in New Japan, and then going to Noah and wrestling like young Kenta and Marufuji. That was my favorite Tenryu.
Was it him or Carlos Colon that Gorilla Monsoon called a youngster during the 1993 Royal Rumble?
That was Carlos Colon.
Because they were both in it. But it's like neither of them are surely the definition of a youngster.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I'm assuming you're not talking about Tenryu's appearances in the 93 and 94 Royal Rumble matches as peak Tenryu.
No. That's just a guest spot. It's not like I said, he's gonna be great by the late 80s, and then he has a very interesting career involving like companies rising and folding around him. But the 90s he's gonna be pretty great, and then like I said, early 2000s Tenryu, when he was a grumpy old man punching young dudes in the mouth, was the best Tenryu.
Who doesn't love punching young boys in the mouth?
Indeed.
So then we get a match that, at least we knew Tenryu was going to be on the card. I don't remember them ever mentioning a women's match. So we had Mexican Women's National Champion, that's a mouthful, Lola Gonzalez versus Vicky Carranza. I felt this was a perfectly adequate match for the Mexican Women's National Championship, the second match of the card. I do think the referee sucked, and the match could have been better had the referee been a little quicker, because this referee was out of place. He was slow, and it wasn't Bronco Lubick. So normally that's the excuse for any Bronco match, but it wasn't him. They'd roll each other up and need to wait an extra few seconds for the referee to get into place. And ultimately, after a series of roll-ups that weren't quite Dean Malenko versus Eddie Guerrero level, Carranza's roll-ups were just a little bit better, as she got a roll-up, got the pin, and won the championship. The crowd, having just seen a major title change, did not seem to care.
So yeah, there is an actual Mexican National Women's Championship that's recognized by the Box de Lucha Commission in Mexico. And like sources like Cage Match and Wikipedia list that as the title on the line in this match, but I spent more time than I should have looking into it, and the lineage is extremely murky, and I could not determine if this was really for that championship or if they just made up a championship. There was no belt present, and it's not like it matters. I'm just a title history nerd, and this came across my desk here. But
Nerds.
May or may not have been for the recognized Mexican National Women's Championship. I guess I have no reason to. Would Fritz Von Erich lie to me?
Never. By the way, we're about 2 years. We're about 2 years away from Lance, so. But Fritz would never lie.
Yeah, I guess we're about a year from him having David Manning sign 8x10s of David Von Erich after he was dead in the cell.
Oh boy. That's one I didn't know about.
You didn't know about that?
No.
I think it was David Manning. It was somebody.
I mean, I would believe it because David Manning sucks, and but oh well. If that wasn't, quite the match, we then have.
Oh my God! Yes.
We then have the Mongol, Wild Bill Irwin, and the Fishman with General Skandor Akbar, because yes, even when we only do one of the two promotions in a show, we have to have Akbar on the show, versus Superstar Chavo Guerrero, Gentleman Chris Adams, and as he was introduced, world-renowned Jose Lothario.
Okay, so as we have established, Genichiro Tenryu was on this card, correct?
Allegedly, yes.
In the 90s, Tenryu owned a promotion called War that is known among hardcore wrestling fans for having the most unimaginably random trios matches. And I believe that this is the match that Tenryu saw and said to himself, someday when I own a wrestling company, I am going to have the most random trios matches you can imagine.
I thought you were going to say that Tenryu booked this one.
I don't think so.
So
Tenryu gets off the fucking plane from Japan, and fucking Ken Mantella's there. He goes, hey, can you draw names out of a hat for me?
I just imagine, because like Wild Bill Irwin on the first few world class shows we did, he was in the opener every week and finished like with a record of like 0 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws. We've never seen the Fishman before. The Mongol we pretend we haven't seen before. Jose Lothario is a step above a jobber. Chavo is, well, Chavo, and Gentleman Chris Adams is new to the territory. But yeah, like, it's funny because Adams is feuding with the Mongol, and I mean, to be honest, this match was a lot better than Adams versus the Mongol would be. But it's a little surprising that they were just part of a random ass 6-man tag.
I fucking love how random, like, historically this match is. On one side, you have Chavo Guerrero, who is a member of the vaunted Guerrero family and would have been the best member of the family had his brother not been Eddie Guerrero, teaming with the guy who trained Shawn Michaels and the guy who trained Steve Austin.
Imagine if he teamed with Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin.
What if Chavo Jr. teamed with Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin?
Chavo Sr.
Chavo Classic, like when he was old, like prime, like 1998 Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin, but like 2004 Chavo Classic.
Yes, that would be tremendous.
Sounds terrible. I love it.
Especially
Best part of
especially Shawn Michaels with a broken back in 1998, having to carry Chavo Classic.
Austin's got no neck. His knees are fucked. Yeah, it sounds hilarious.
Chavo's the healthiest person in the match.
So the highlights of this match, Chavo and Fishman did some very good lucha shit. Bill Mercer noted that the Mongol is Adam's hated rival. And I've been watching this show for 6 weeks, and I was like, since when? So apparently they're supposed to know each other from Europe. Because the Mongolian wrestled in Europe.
That may have been just before you started. Yeah, this has been going on for a little bit. Because when Chris Adams did his debut promo where he was drinking tea with Bill Mercer, he talked about how he knew the Mongol from back in Europe and he was coming here to take care of the Mongol.
Did the Mongol work for, like, did he work in England or Germany or something? Did he?
I didn't bother to look it up, but to be honest, it doesn't have to be true. It's 1983. They weren't expecting 2 nerds to have the internet in 2024 to look that up.
Yeah. At one point, Jose Lothario tags in and punched Bill Irwin in the fucking face like 4 times. And 2 of them were loud. Like, I don't know if these guys just both have amazing working punches or if they were just punching the shit out of each other.
Possibly both. This is when I noted that Bill Mercer was sitting at ringside just watching the matches while we were listening to Bill Mercer do commentary. So obviously, unlike the normal world-class shows where you can see Mercer in the background doing commentary at the Sportatorium, this was obviously, post-produced commentary.
Yeah.
And the funniest part to me during this match was you could see Bill Mercer on camera drinking a Coke while he's talking about Chris Adams hitting a super kick on Mongol. By the way, I did note that the difference between World Class and Mid-South, because when Irwin was on one show, he was on both shows. He was being made fun of on World Class for being called Irwin, while at the same time he was on Mid-South being made fun of because, quote unquote, his real name was Chauncey, which isn't even his real name, but that was the gimmick in Mid-South.
So it's funny, like as we have discussed, I'm watching stuff from both 1983 and 1993 concurrently, and the same people keep popping up. So guess who has just shown up doing jobs in WCW in early 1993?
Wild Bill Irwin.
Wild Bill Irwin.
Didn't he do the JOB for the British Bulldog at Super Brawl?
Yes, that was Bulldog's WCW debut.
Yes, I know way too much when I know that off the top of my head. I note that Chavo tried to do a spinning heel kick to Mongol, but it was horribly mistimed. I don't even know who to blame here, but essentially he hit Mongol with his ankle while flying by. And Chavo pinned Mongol with a flying crossbody, which was such an exciting finish that Bill Irwin, trying to make the save, kicked the camera, so we got a great shot of the roof instead of the finish.
Yes.
And again, this is
Wasn't a bad little match. It
post-produced.
was interesting.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
probably the best match you'll ever see the Mongol in.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, then we got a backstage promo with Buddy Roberts talking about Iceman Parsons. They had warned Parsons to mind his own business, but since he didn't, tonight they're going to dump the Freebird hair cream on him, which is basically Nair back in 1983. They then showed, Buddy cutting Parsons' braid a month ago, and then Parsons cutting a little bit of Buddy's hair, which angered the Freebirds. And then Buddy said that Parsons will be called Mr. B for bald match.
Ooh.
Which is just tremendous.
Bald
All
man
right.
King Parsons.
Okay. So I'm gonna bet we haven't talked about this, but I'm gonna bet you and I have a similar feeling about the finish of this hair match. So it's Buddy Roberts versus Iceman Parsons in the hair match. And I'll talk about the beginning later on. But the finish of the match, Buddy goes for the hair cream, but biased fucking David Manning stops him. Iceman hits she calls that the rear view. Actually, no, I'm sorry, that was after the match. Fuck, I screwed that one up. I was talking about how they finally noted Harley Race was going to be defending the world title, when suddenly Buddy Roberts won.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy rolled up Parsons. Yeah, he had a giant yank of the trunks, but Buddy won. Buddy pinned Iceman Parsons in the hair match.
He did.
And Iceman pleads with David Manning, who questions Buddy, but they never reversed the decision. Finally, Buddy goes for the hair cream, which he has every right to do because he's won the match. But then that's when biased fucking David Manning stops him. That's when Iceman hits she calls that the rear view. And then he takes the cream and puts it on Buddy's hair. Buddy got screwed here. And then Hayes gets in the ring. Parsons knocks him the fuck out and goes for the hair cream, but Hayes ran for safety. So Parsons lost the match and didn't have to lose his hair. In a total and complete screw job. And I don't know how the fans in Texas reacted to this. It's possible that they reacted better to this than they do a decade later when, spoiler alert, for like a year from now, Jim Cornette does a fuck finish in Smoky Mountain with a hair match where Ricky Morton loses, but they do a screw job where Candido ends up getting his head shaved instead. And the crowd shit on it because they weren't happy Morton lost, but at the same time they're like, holy crap, Morton's gonna lose his hair. And it was a total bait and switch that they weren't happy about. So it's like, hey, here's where Cornette got his idea for the hair match screw job. And I'll be honest, I knew Buddy Roberts was losing his hair because I know the gimmick coming up, but I was pissed that was the finish. Buddy won.
Finish was dumb. Match was okay. It was like classic pro wrestling. You got a babyface who can't really wrestle, but he's charismatic and can do the theatrics of wrestling well. And you got a heel who could sell like a motherfucker and make the babyface look like a competent wrestler. So the match was decent, and then the finish was dumb.
Yeah. It was finally during this match that Mercer told us that Harley Race won the NWA World Title from Ric Flair. And actually, he didn't even say that at first. He just said that Ric Flair lost the title, and it took several minutes for him to actually say that Harley won it. And technically, he didn't even say that Harley would defend tonight. So at this point, if you don't know anything, you're just listening to the commentary, it's either Kevin versus Flair non-title or Kevin versus Race, and they don't even really say anything. I note that they did time calls, and it made me wonder what would happen if this went to a time limit draw when Buddy won. And you heard me rant already about that.
Was Gordy late? He didn't come up for this. He wasn't there for the promo later, but he was there for the main event.
I don't know, possibly.
Yeah.
Or also, it's easier for, Iceman to come back on two people, especially when they're the weaker two of the Freebirds.
Yeah.
But
Especially
if
when
you
one
had,
of them is not Terry Gordy.
if you had Gordy out there, it would have been like, it'd have been a little too much. You would have had to have some Von Erich run in to help out. And
Yeah.
it was best in this point to leave Iceman Parsons to his own and to get the win on his own. Or not so much to get the win, but to, leave with his head held high at the end. And as we mentioned earlier, due to the editing of this show, technically, the commentary of the hair match told us the finish of the Texas title match, during that match.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had Jimmy. Yep. Then we had the aforementioned Texas title match: Jimmy Garvin with Sunshine versus David Von Erich for the Texas title. They are expected to explode on the crowd for this match. I forget who said that, but I wrote it down. So
consensually, I hope.
Yes. The winner of this match will also get the money.
Yeah, where'd the money come from?
Who fucking knows? He just, all of a sudden, the money is on the line. What money? Maybe
like the money.
Yes. And unfortunately, the money is still on the line here. As I'm assuming the money is the winner's purse, but they don't say that. And the money has never been part of the discussion of this feud.
Weird thing that was to say.
Yeah. Mercer calls Garvin a superb physical specimen. I'm not sure if that's what I described Garvin as, but I mean, I guess. David keeps knocking Garvin into the ropes, which would shockingly lead to Garvin getting the ropes and getting out of predicaments. Garvin locked on a rear chin lock and screamed at referee Bronco Lubick to ask David if he submits. And apparently Bronco is more biased than David Manning because Bronco just didn't even ask. He just stared at David the whole time.
Dude, Bronco Lubick sucks so much as a referee. He's so old and he's so over it, and he just drops down to one knee to count. And his pants are so fucking high. I swear to God, they must be halfway between his belly button and his nipples.
It's the classic old man's pants. You'll get there in a few. When we're doing the 30th anniversary episode, and you've got your pants around your nipples.
Either my gut's gonna be a lot smaller, or my pants a lot fucking bigger.
So David locked on the sleep hold, which excited Bill Mercer, the announcer, while Bill Mercer, the ringside observer, looked concerned. The finish was weird, and I had to rewind this a couple times to figure out what the fuck happened. So David goes for a crossbody. Garvin catches him and throws him on the top rope. Garvin makes the cover. David kicks out at 2, but Garvin repositions himself, and then Sunshine grabs the ankle, and David could not kick out. And so Jimmy Garvin is your new Texas heavyweight champion. And before we get to the weirdness of the aftermath, what did you think of the match?
I thought the match was pretty good. Like their TV match a few weeks ago was just kind of whatever, but this was a big match on a big card in a big arena, and they wrestled like it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, just why? Why couldn't somebody just win?
Apparently, this Texas title needs to be held up 50 or 60 times here. Because
look, as a Texan, we do have our problems, but I don't think we don't warrant a champion.
Yeah. So we go to commercial, we come back from commercial, and Bronco Lubick has dragged Jimmy Garvin back to the ring. And they announced that the many, many officials of the NWA are here and saw what happened. And as a result of a meeting that has suddenly taken place in the back, they have determined the title is still held up. The NWA officials have said the belt must be settled at the earliest possible convenience. And most importantly, the money is still being held up.
fucking Fritz and Bob Geigel and Jim Crockett and Don Owens having an emergency parlay backstage at Rupp Arena to make sure that this travesty doesn't befall the Texas Heavyweight Championship.
I like the idea that they had this at Rupp Arena
What did I say?
as opposed to Reunion.
Now look, if you're gonna call me out every time I say something wrong, this is gonna be a really long trip.
Oh Lord. So the money is still being held up, but I wonder who is responsible for holding on to the money. Because I mean, there are some people on this show that I do not trust to hold the money. Capital T, capital M, the money.
Does anybody get winners' money? How does that
I
work?
mean,
Who gets winners?
I mean, that's what they always said back in the day, is the winner would get the winner's share of the purse money and all that. But I imagine this match, they both got their per diem. Whatever that would be.
Well, you gotta have your per diem. That's your travel money.
Exactly. And then it was time for the second half of the show. And and speaking of the randomness of this show, Fritz was looking especially grumpy in the ring as we switched back to Japanese commentary, as he has a proclamation to make before the next bout. And Fritz had a wrestling match with the Scroll, where the Scroll put up a hell of a fight and almost picked up the win here over Fritz. But he announces Jumbo Tsuruta, whose name he pronounces correctly, versus Ted DiBiase, who is Ted DiBiase of Mid-South fame, but he mispronounced DiBiase.
Incredible.
Yes. I do want to give a shout out to Mark Lawrence's frilly dicky that he's wearing.
I'm sorry, his what?
His frilly dicky.
Now look, if you ever comment on my frilly dicky, we're gonna have a problem.
I would never comment on your frilly dicky. I've never seen your frilly dicky. Mark Lawrence's frilly dicky was out there for everyone to see.
Is this why I'm Mark Lawrence? Because of the frilly dicky?
Of course. Would you rather be Grumpy Fritz?
Here's what I'm imagining. You know the dickies, like the workman's coveralls? I'm imagining a set of those just covered in lace. That's what I'm imagining as a frilly dicky.
Mark Lawrence was not wearing that. That would have been
Michael
tremendous.
Myers should wear that in the next Halloween movie.
I would totally go watch that movie if he was wearing frilly overalls. It might explain why he's so angry. But then we have a match for the Pacific Wrestling Federation United National Championship with champion Jumbo Tsuruta versus Ted DiBiase. DiBiase-san has his hand wrapped, so at least if the broken hand is a work, he's continuing it. And everyone's just mispronouncing Ted DiBiase's last name. I note that they did the 10-minute call, and I realized I hadn't written anything about the match yet.
Yeah, it was just like a good wrestling match. Two really good wrestlers had a good match. I mean, imagine that.
Yeah.
The hand, I don't know. I don't know if the hand was actually broken or if he just had it taped because he knew that there's like a lot of there's some overflow between World Class and Mid-South TV, so he wanted to keep the gimmick up.
Yeah. I note this was a high-quality wrestling match that the fans didn't care about because they had no reason to care about it. With all due respect to Jumbo Tsuruta and Ted DiBiase, neither man has ever appeared on World Class, at least in the months that we've been watching here. And I don't believe either were ever mentioned in the many plugs that we've seen for the show. So this was...
I don't know the exact circumstances, but Fritz and Baba were always very close, so I assume this is just part of the long-term ongoing relationship between Fritz and Baba.
And Fritz and Bill Watts were always close because there'd be a few occasions, where people in Mid-South would be finishing up and he'd send them to Dallas just so they could keep coming back and wrestle Superdome shows or other big events. Specifically like the Midnight Express. That's why they didn't go to Crockett earlier than they did, because Watts asked them to go to Dallas so they could keep working Mid-South.
Yeah. But yeah, just completely at random, a match for the United National Heavyweight Championship, which is one of the 3 belts that would go on to comprise and still comprises the All Japan Triple Crown.
Yep. But I noted that since this match, neither of them were ever advertised for the show, this was as good as throwing Iron Mike Sharp versus Jose Luis Rivera into a 1986 WWF house show opener, for as much as the crowd knew or cared about this one.
Better match, though.
Oh, of course. Not even close. 1983.
I'm never going to complain about getting to see Jumbo Tsuruta wrestle Ted DiBiase.
No. I did note that in 1983, Ted DiBiase was watching his 1992 Shawn Michaels tapes as he broke out a teardrop suplex. And then the finish is one of those finishes you see on pretty much every 80s wrestling show ever. DiBiase goes for the figure 4. Tsuruta turns it into a small package for the win.
Classic.
It is the finish you've seen 8 bajillion times, and it always works.
Always.
Yeah. So,
maybe I should go to I should go visit Ted DiBiase and wherever he's in jail in Mississippi. Is he in jail, or is he just being? When he goes to jail, I should go and visit him and just to ask him about wrestling Jumbo Tsuruta.
we'll see how well that goes. And like I always said, he wouldn't have had all these money issues if he wasn't needlessly outspending Cameron Grimes in NXT a few years ago.
Well, you notice he was fine until he got into Christianity. It's when he started having problems.
In the interest of fairness, I don't know how long he's been in Christianity.
Long enough, too long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I have it somewhere, but I at least used to have his biography that came out like 15, 20 years ago. It was pretty good, and I'm sure by that point he was Captain Religion. Because at some point he tried going to WWE to be a road agent, but it was too raunchy for him, so he quit. But yeah. So Grumpy Fritz was back, and at this point, I'm convinced that this is when he finds out that Kevin's not getting the fucking NWA title, because, he's one grumpy motherfucker here, despite allegedly a sold-out crowd. And then, on a show where we've had a shit ton of randomness, this one, boy oh boy, King Kong Bundy versus PWF Heavyweight Champion Giant Baba.
Yeah. PWF Heavyweight title, also 1/3 of the future All Japan Triple Crown.
So Bundy is returning for one night only after his loser leaves World Class for 60 days match against Tola Yatsu, which actually did take place more than 60 days ago, so technically they did live up to the steps. Bundy is without General Skandor Akbar, and I was wondering if Akbar ever took his car back that he bought Bundy when Akbar was worried about his OPEC negotiations, which was...
So, they announced Bundy at 450 pounds. And I can accept that.
Yeah.
But they announced Baba at 475 pounds. Come the fuck on. Yes, did you not hear that?
I must have been paying attention. I was too busy noticing that Baba looked like he hadn't eaten anything in weeks.
Yeah, Giant Baba is very tall, but he is very lean. He was a baseball player.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I wonder if Mrs. Baba took care of him after the match. There weren't any. Actually, there were a lot of good-looking blonde Americans on the show. Maybe she was busy elsewhere.
She was waiting for Johnny Ace to come along.
The nice blonde, pretty American who says yes, ma'am, and yes, sir.
A dynamic dude.
The ace in the hole.
Sonny Siaki?
Yes, exactly. Uh, so Bundy and Fritz shoved each other. Not that that came to anything, which actually is a nice throwback because either Fritz's retirement match or one of his coming out of retirement matches from a few years ago was against Bundy, so it made sense here.
I recall
Uh,
that. Yeah.
Fritz looked like he was having trouble pronouncing PWF when he read the proclamation, and then he said he hoped the better man emerged victorious. And I may have been underdoing that pause there. I may have to go back in and like edit in like an extra 30 seconds of pause to give you just an idea of how long it took Fritz to say his last word.
Poor Fritz.
Yes.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah. I have nothing but love for Giant Baba. He's maybe my favorite promoter and booker of all time, but this match was not very good.
Shockingly,
But at least the Japanese guys brought their own belts, and they didn't have to borrow the two that Fritz has.
I thought you meant they didn't need to borrow the Mexican National Women's Championship, which was not found anywhere.
They should have loaned her a belt. Nobody would have noticed.
Give her the All Japan PWF title. That would have been great.
For that big giant United National title, it'd be funny.
Oh, it wasn't the PWF a promotion in Buffalo that because Baba couldn't get another NWA title reign, he bought the PWF so he could have American championships in All Japan?
No, okay, you were mixing up two different stories. The promotion out of Buffalo was the NWF, and it was the promotion that Antonio Inoki bought so he could have an American World Championship. The PWF, the Pacific Wrestling Federation, was like the governing body that Baba created when he formed All Japan in 1972. One of the first things he did was to establish the PWF World Heavyweight Championship. But then within like a year or so, Baba got the NWA membership, so it became just the PWF Heavyweight Championship because only the NWA World Heavyweight Champion is the world champion.
I always thought it was funny that the that All Japan and New Japan were established the same year.
Yeah, well, when you know the story, it's all about the dissolution of the JWA, which was Ricky Dozan's promotion. It should be on YouTube. Kim Justice, who is a creator that does some amazing wrestling documentaries, has a fantastic like hour-long documentary that's the story of Baba and Inoki and the dissolution of the JWA and the formation of New Japan and All Japan.
Actually, speaking of that, plug something that I don't write or own. Chris Charlton, the New Japan announcer, Chris Charlton, wrote a tremendous book a while ago about the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling called Lion's Pride. And just checked on Amazon. You can either buy it for $35, or if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can borrow it for free.
I already have it.
Oh yeah, I have it on my Kindle as well. It's fantastic. So was Eggshells, which was, I think that's his book too. Yeah, it's about wrestling at the Tokyo Dome.
Yes, both very good. Love Chris Charlton. Maybe the most underrated color commentator active in pro wrestling over on the English feed on New Japan. He's really fantastic at conveying the gravity of what's going on and the emotional. You always understand the emotional stakes that the big matches have for the wrestlers in it.
I just love him marking out too. Like I was watching the G1 final when Ibushi got injured against it was Okada, and I forgot that was when Shibata had his first. It wasn't necessarily a comeback match, but he had his exhibition with Zack Sabre Jr. and he marked the fuck out when they announced what it was. And it's like, even if you didn't know the story of Shabbat, you just heard Chris Charlton marking out, like, it made you excited for this old man that you've never seen wrestle before. And I mean, Shabbat is not really old, you know what I mean? And yeah, he's just amazing. And I'm somebody who hates change. So when they mixed up the Kevin Kelly, Don Callis announced duo with Chris Charlton, I was like, ugh, I don't like this. I had the same reaction when Gino Gambino started doing it, and I loved Gino as a commentator, and I hope he someday got his Bullet Club tracksuit. Um,
Yeah.
Trey, as our resident New Japan historian, or at least compared to me, did Gino ever get his Bullet Club tracksuit?
I don't think they have started making him a Geno size yet.
Ah, damn. Is Gino
But
still
yeah,
doing
Chris
commentary?
Charlton is. He was there for the New Japan Cup this year. It was the first time in a couple of years. Yeah, it was so it was him and Walker Stewart. A couple of the shows. It was the three of them with Chris Charlton. Very good.
So Walker Stewart, I have to
Yeah.
ask, and hey, it's time for a tangent here. The first time I ever saw him do commentary, it's also the only time I've seen him because, like I said, I don't really watch much New Japan these days, was the Tokyo Dome show, and I thought he sucked. I fucking hated him.
Really,
I
really.
I hate, like, almost every match. If you go back and watch, he was calling the finish before it happened. Like, while the 3 count isn't thing, there was no drama listening to him because he would be announcing the winner of the match during the 3 count. And I was like, mind you, like, I doubt New Japan is giving him that specific of a finish, to call, but like, he should know better than to be essentially announcing the winner of the match during the winning pinfall.
Yeah, and maybe that's an issue of him not knowing and mispredicting what the finish is going to be. At the time of the Tokyo Dome show, he had only started like 3 months before. He's got a lot more experience now, and he's steadily improving, I think.
Oh, we'll see January 4th, 2025, the next time I watch New Japan. Although I might be going to Forbidden Door Sunday, although that technically doesn't count as a New Japan show, but it kind of does.
It kind of does. It's a co-branded show. Now, my dream broadcast team for that, which I won't get, would be Excalibur, Chris Charlton, Veda Scott.
Interesting. Is Veda doing New Japan shows?
Yeah, she does a lot of the US shows.
So maybe she'll do it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. It's like, I honestly, like, as much as I hate the gimmickiness of it, I'm sad that they've never done a KOPW match on a Forbidden Door show, just because AEW isn't the center of serious wrestling. So, like, hey, let's do a KOPW match. But
They could do that on a pre-show.
true, but they still have never done it. Honestly, I don't think
Yeah,
they've
that's
had.
what I'm saying. They could do it on a pre-show. It'd be fine.
I don't even think they've had Yano on the shows yet. And I love me some Yano.
Oh my God, the last New Japan show that I went to was when they came to Dallas last September. I had Yano versus Joey Janela. It was fantastic.
Ew. I said ew for Joey Janela, not Yano, but yeah. I was
I feel
supposed
the
to
same
go.
way about Joey Janela, but it was a great comedy match.
I was dragged to a CZW show a decade or so ago at the
I'm so
WrestleMania New
sorry.
Jersey. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I felt like I had to give my brother something because I was dragging him to, like, Dragon Gate and Evolve and all this shit. And he just wanted to see CZW, and it was head to head with Jay Briscoe winning the ROH title from Kevin Steen.
Oh,
Yeah. And this was the show, and I kind of referenced it, I think, last week, where Jun Kasai was in some sort of crazy death match at the finish. And after the match, while he's covered in blood and glass and whatever else, he comes jumping at the guardrail where I'm standing, and I dive like 5 feet backwards into everybody's arms. Like, like, I doubt he would have actually touched me, but motherfucker, I wasn't even testing that.
How did we get from Giant Baba and King Kong Bundy to Jun Kasai?
I fucked up the story about the PWF, and that took
Yeah.
us down the New Japan hole. But Baba, going back to Baba versus Bundy, Baba pops the crowd with a knife edge chop, but they were not impressed by his overhand head chops. I'm like, fuck, Great Khali could do better chops than that. And I mean, maybe Khali's chops were also probably stiff as fuck too, but they certainly looked better.
Have you
Baba,
ever heard this? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say Baba knocked him down and did the goofiest step over of Bundy's prone body you've ever seen.
Have you ever heard the story of when Okada was young? Like, before he started the New Japan Dojo, when he had like gone to Mexico to train and then was like working in the US. Or maybe this was like maybe this was here when he was on excursion. They were on some indie show in like Pennsylvania, and as a rib, Gran Akuma told Okada that the crowd were like big Baba fans and needed to do giant Baba spots. And I wish, like God, I could see that.
Speaking of things we wish to God we could see, there was a story from like 2010 when Bret Hart was doing his weird little run in the WWE. There was a house show where it was him and the Hart Dynasty versus like Alberto Del Rio, Drew McIntyre, and Jack Swagger. And before the match, the three heels nearly got into a fist fight over who was going to do the job to the sharpshooter. I wish that was filmed because that just sounds tremendous.
Outstanding.
It makes me think of Jericho's book where he talks about at a Disney taping, it was Alex Wright versus Hardbody Harrison, and they were arguing over who was going to be the heel.
Yeah. So Baba won with the 16 bun kick, which is basically a big boot.
I wrote running big boot quotations. I was afraid he was going to break his leg.
Sure, you can call it running.
And then I'm like, how fucking old is Baba here? And he's only 45.
Like, he was already past his prime.
Like legitimately, I'm like, I'm 39 and I'm hoping when I'm 45, I'm not moving like Baba.
Within about 2 more years, Baba's gonna put himself down the card and mostly work multi-man comedy tags. He's pretty much done as a serious wrestler at this point.
Well, speaking of people who are apparently done as serious wrestlers, I was shocked by the booking of this next match. So it is it's our 3-on-1 handicap elimination match with Kamala with General Skandor Akbar and Fry Ye versus Tola Yatsu, Mike Bond, and African champion, the Honorable Arman Hussein. When did he win the African title? Who knows? But he's apparently the African champion.
Did he win it from Power Udi?
Power Udi would never do a job. Are you kidding me?
I just imagine Tola Yatsu finding out that he's one of the 3 losers in a 3-on-1 handicap match and thinking, man, I wrestled in the fucking Olympics.
I'm like, to me, it's like not even like he's in this match where he's gonna have to do a job. I'm like, he's been pushed as a very serious, nearly top heel since we've been watching this. Yatsu was running through all of Akbar's army like they were nothing. Like everybody Akbar put against him, Yatsu was beating without much effort. Like it was tremendous. And then we get to here, so I'm like, okay, it's 3-1 elimination, and I know Kamal is going to win, but obviously they pin Mike Bond because Mike Bond's a jobber, so he's going to be first. You might beat Yatsu second to finish off with him versus the manager. Because, of course you're going to end with the manager doing the final job because that's where the pop comes in. And Mike Bond, again, is a jobber with no association to Tola Yatsu or Arman Hussein. It's like, I was about to say, where's Mr. Ebony? But Mr. Ebony was Akbar's client, which By the way, they could have put Mr. Ebony in that 6-man earlier, made it a 7-man.
Oh god.
But Bond during the intro looked like he was laughing about this whole thing. It was just absurd. And I was in the middle of writing that Yatsu's been this unbeatable badass, and Kamala was just destroying him, and then pinned him with a splash. I'm like, yes, it's the end of that push. And then Arman Hussein, the manager, he just walks off. He just walks off.
Yeah.
Because
So
the
this is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the African champion can't do a job.
No, absolutely not. Power Udi would never.
I guess if you would have won, then you would have had to have Kamala versus Arman for the African championship, and that
Oh my
wasn't in the
God.
cards, I'm assuming.
Oh my god. Kamala versus Power Udi.
Holy fuck! I mean, I guess there's many reasons why I can't do that now, but I would pay money to see that now.
You could sell out a stadium with that match.
Zombified 1-foot Kamala versus Power Udi, who Tornado is still alive.
So believe it or not, this is the end of Tola Yatsu in the territory.
Oh, I didn't even look it up. So this is it.
Yeah.
This is his final match.
He's
All right.
gonna go to Florida for a few months, and then by October he's gonna be back in New Japan.
Interesting. But then that leaves Kamala versus Mike Bond, who has zero credibility at all. And this is the Conquistadors being saved till the very end at Survivor Series 88. It's like, Mike Bond is here to do a job, and we're going to wait it out until he actually does it. But Kamala pins him after a pair of splashes. I actually had him pinned after a pair of splashes, and then picked him up. He hit a third splash and gets the pin. And of course, world-class Kamala was smarter than every other Kamala because Kamala knew to turn people over onto their back for the pin.
Well, I was just thinking that because I've been watching WWF in 1993, which Kamala just turned babyface, and he's with the Reverend Slick, and yeah, they just did the thing where he didn't know to turn the guy over to pin him.
Yeah. Honestly, it may have just been World Class. Might have been the only place that ever had Kamala know how to pin people, because he was on Mid-South doing the same thing a few months ago, where he needed to be told to roll the people over.
I did not know until I saw the build. Did you know that they were building a Kamala versus Bam Bam Bigelow match for WrestleMania 9?
I did. Because I'm that person that knows everything.
Apparently cut for time the day of travesty.
I mean, that's something the WWF sucked at, especially in the early '90s pay-per-view, is like timing out their pay-per-views. And like when you watch that WrestleMania, could it have been any worse with Bam Bam versus Kamala? I mean, I don't know, like what matches he could have cut time for. Maybe take 5 minutes from Shawn versus Tatanka, and 5 minutes from Hogan and Beefcake versus DiBiase and IRS. But Brett versus Yokozuna was supposed to go 20 minutes, but they had no time left.
The only match on that show that's any good is the Head Shrinkers and the Steiners.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, Shawn versus Tatanka is like, by default, it's one of the best matches on the card, but that's not saying a whole lot.
There was a 6-man tag on an early episode of Raw that was surprisingly great, and it was Shawn Michaels and the Beverly Brothers against Tatanka and the Nasty Boys.
Yeah, the Nasty Boys, it's like, I don't say they were criminally underrated, but they're an underrated tag team to some degree, because it's like, I
am just now realizing that I have never properly appreciated the Nasty Boys.
Yeah. Like, there are a lot of people, like, especially in that 90s people, it's like, you just kind of overlook them because, okay, great. Like, they weren't Misawa and Kabashi and, all these great All Japan tag team matches, but I mean, who the fuck was? But it's like the Smoking Guns were a perfectly good tag team. honestly, for a little while, and I think you're going to get to it here in '93 WWF, when Men on a Mission come in, they're surprisingly decent, I'll say.
Really?
Yeah. It's and this was before Mabel really ballooned up. Like, he was probably early to mid 400s. And so it's like he was a lot, like he was always agile, especially for his size, but he was a lot more agile at the time. But I honestly think like they were fucked the moment they came in and had those big baggy purple tights. Like the Mabel that you're about to see in 1993, if he came in as the badass monster heel Mabel of 1995, that could have been something. And with like actual tights and not his baggy pajamas. Because like you can't take a man wearing those baggy pajamas seriously.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Did you know the Nasty Boys did the All Japan Tag League in '89?
I did not know that, but part of me isn't shocked. Did you know the new Blackjacks
Amazing.
did either the All Japan or New Japan Tag League in '97?
Yes, it was the All Japan Tag League.
Yeah. Barry Windham and Blackjack Bradshaw.
Oh wow, the Nasty Boys wrestled Jumbo Tsuruta and Yoshiaki Yatsu.
There you go.
Also, other teams that they wrestled include Shunji Takano and the Great Kabuki, the British Bulldogs, Dan Crockett, Doug Furness, Bill Irwin, and Terry Gordy. Footloose, the Toshiaki Kawada, Samson Fuyuki team, Abdullah the Butcher and Tiger Jeet Singh, and Genichiro Tenryu and Stan Hansen. That sounds badass, actually.
Did you know that Abdullah the Butcher goes to WCW briefly in 1990 to team with Norman as a babyface tag team?
Was that when he got electrocuted at the time?
Oh no, this was before that.
Oh.
That was 91. This was 1990, where I imagine whatever Turner was paying was not enough to team with a babyface Norman the Lunatic.
Can you blame him?
No, not at all. By the way, we still haven't finished up talking about the 3-on-1 handicap elimination match.
Oh, yeah.
Because after the match, Kamala keeps up the attack on Mike Bond when Bruiser Brody, of all people, run in for the save. The fans, who did not care at all for most of this match, popped for this confrontation, and Mercer said that he came out to help a fallen friend. I want to know more about the friendship between Bruiser Brody and Mike Bond.
Yes. On one hand, I was excited at the prospect of a Kamala and Bruiser Brody program. And on the other hand, I was confused about why Brody was friends with Mike Bond.
Look, who the hell's going to do the job in the program between Brody and Kamala?
Mike Bond.
There you go. It'll be like how Ric Flair lost Vader's strap match for him.
No, just do Bruiser Brody and Mike Bond against Kamala on Friday.
There you go. And
do we know who Friday was at this point?
I looked it up a while ago and I forget who it is because they were bouncing between two people, and I forget who they were. And I apologize to all the fabulous listeners out there who, are probably screaming, "Hey, Arya, you said this." And I'm hoping that, Trey, you can hear me just fine right now because my computer is taking a massive shit right now.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Okay, good. Okay, there we go. My computer's decided to like me again.
Can you hear? You good?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. All right. So
you good?
Yep, I'm good. So for some reason, my Word document just scrolled up 3 pages. So we're not going to talk about Ted DiBiase versus Jumbo Tsuruta again. So keep scrolling, where earlier today, Mark Lawrence interviewed Bruiser Brody before, and I quote, the big American match. I can't say I ever heard Brody cut a promo, and this was not what I imagined it would be. He was very chill, very down to earth. and said that there was no doubt that he'd be here today to help out his friend, Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah, I did not know that Brody just did regular ass promos like this in the US. I had kind of seen like there's a famous-ish like 15-minute clip that he did with some news station guy that sort of like touted as an early shoot interview, but I didn't know he did promos like this on US TV. Like in Japan, Brody was always known as the intelligent monster, but yeah, I didn't know he said anything other than "Huss."
It's funny because I've always heard about Brody, but like I never really watched much of him. But it was like I guess I shouldn't have been shocked just how much of a ripoff John Nord was of Bruiser Brody.
Oh yeah.
Like
There's
I mean
been an
I guess
awful lot of Bruiser Brody ripoff.
I mean I guess if you're gonna rip somebody off, you might as well rip off one of the best, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So then we get the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. As I wrote, Harley Rave. It was not Harley Rave. He's actually Harley Race with a C versus Kevin Von Erich. And
I have to say that this was a very unfair situation for Harley Race.
yes. And the reason why, we've had this storyline going on for about 2 or 3 months at this point that Ric Flair is always getting himself disqualified. Ric Flair threw Kevin Von Erich over the top rope to save his title. Well, so they had the stipulation where if Flair got disqualified, he'd lose the title, and if toss over the top rope was no longer a disqualification. Even though those were for Ric Flair, they kept the stipulations for Harley Race.
I knew that the NWA World Champion just inherited the old champion schedule. Did not know he inherited his shitty stipulations.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So I note that Harley Race always says, there's no better place than under those bright lights. It was especially poignant as they had a dedicated spotlight on Harley here for his opening here.
As they should.
Yes. And then, of course, I noticed that biased fucking David Manning is our referee here.
Oh, of course. They would not have anybody else referee a Von Erich World Title match.
No. So Kevin gets a 1 count off a flying crossbody while Mercer screamed that it was a 2 count. I guess that's another conspiracy to set up a future rematch. Harley complains, obviously in storyline, but when he loses the title back to Flair at Starrcade, he cuts a post-match promo basically saying that Starrcade was designed for Flair, but that could not have been as biased and set up as any of these Von Erich title matches. Even though the match was perfectly fine and perfectly acceptable, I was sitting here hoping they weren't going to go 60 minutes. And when I looked at the clock, there was less than 30 minutes, and we still had the American match to go. Kevin flung Harley over the top rope, which Harley got upset because it wasn't a DQ.
Harley took the best bump.
Oh, yeah. And Harley's he's closer to his last match than his first match here. And Kevin gets the claw on, but Harley gets out of it. And this isn't... I'm honestly, going back to watch these World Class shows, I was shocked, how much that... I always thought that the claw was this ultimate finisher, but they use the claw 35 times a match usually. And it rarely is the finish.
Indeed. So I am even more convinced now that Kevin is the best wrestler of the brothers. This match was great. Harley Race, such a fantastic bump taker, just amazing selling, the consummate world champion. Kevin did an amazing job selling his arm. Mm-hmm. This was just fantastic until the finish.
So Kevin hurt his arm when Harley heaved him over the top rope. He bounces off the table and crashes on the floor. I did note that Bill Mercer isn't at ringside anymore, so it kept us from the hilarity of Kevin landing on Mercer, the ringside observer, while Mercer, the announcer, would have to ignore it. And then,
funny.
Before we get to the finish, we get a moment, and I forget if I talked to you about this, but I'm shocked you haven't brought this up yet. I get that he was doing something to try to relieve the pressure on his shoulder. However, Kevin just gets in the ring and sticks his hand down his tights and leaves it there for an extraordinary amount of time.
I mean, that's what I do when I need to feel comforted.
I'm like, if I'm Harley, I'm like, that motherfucker better not touch me with that hand the rest of this match. And I don't think he did. But it's like, he just stuck his hand down his pants and left it there for probably a good 30 to 45 seconds. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, weird.
I once had a shoulder issue where I'd pain shooting from my shoulder down to my fingertips. And and the only comfortable spot I could find was like just dangling my left arm downwards. I did not think to put my hand in my pants. Maybe that would have helped.
Yeah, I have some really bad recurring shoulder problems too, so maybe I'll try that next time it flares up.
Just grab your dong.
So
David Manning, by the way, was even like looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? Harley keeps working on the shoulder. Manning keeps checking on Kevin, which just gives Kevin a moment to recover because Manning is still the most biased referee in the world. Harley comes off the ropes, gets caught with the claw, so Harley dropped him outside through the ropes where he lands on a cameraman at ringside. David Von Erich runs out for no good reason, so Harley kicked him, and David then gets in the ring and beats the shit out of Harley for the disqualification. What
David
yeah.
fucked his brother out of a chance to win the title, and then he wants a title shot.
Yeah, that's the best part here. He's a hot-headed asshole who cost his brother the world title because he couldn't mind his own fucking business, and then screamed that Harley still couldn't beat Kevin even with one arm. Dude, there's like 2 minutes of fucking wrestling here. How do you know Harley couldn't beat him with one arm? But now David screams that it's now his chance and says that if he can't win the world title, well, he'll quit wrestling. And I can tell you that that is one stipulation that they hold up. Because David stops wrestling and never wins the world title.
Technically correct is the best kind of correct.
Yes. But yeah, honestly, if this was 2024, Kevin's turning heel next week because, your brother fucked you out of the world title here.
They jobbed out the world champion as much as they could without beating him. Like, he sold for most of the match, won by DQ, and then got his ass beat.
I was wondering, what was going to be the out, because I knew that Kevin doesn't win the title, and I was not expecting David being a hot-headed asshole who cost his brother the belt.
Yeah, I knew it was a DQ. I didn't know what happened.
All right, so Michael Hayes cuts a backstage promo with Mark Lawrence, who still can't believe Brody showed up. And then we get the main event, the American Tag Team Championship on the line. Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy versus Kerry Von Erich and Bruiser Brody. Suddenly, here on Star Wars, the Star Wars theme played, and Kerry and Brody come to the ring. I note that the girls were all over Kerry, kissing him, and I was seriously hoping they'd go after Brody, but they didn't.
Yeah, so it was so cool. It was so cool to see the Freebirds actually come out to Freebird. And then Kerry and Brody coming out to the Star Wars theme at Star Wars was amazing.
So before the introductions of this Tag Team Championship match, Hayes takes the microphone and he has a challenge to make. And here in this main event match, he has a challenge to make to one Iceman Parsons. Anywhere.
Why now?
Yeah. And for free, even if it's in his mama's backyard. But he wants a lights out match, and if he loses, then Iceman can cut his hair too. And
I can't imagine if Michael Hayes has ever done anything for free.
Well, spoiler alert, I don't know if this match ever actually happens. I mean, I'm assuming it does. But Michael Hayes does not lose his hair.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So I
Ever,
don't
does
know.
he?
I'm pretty sure no. I think even now he still has,
Yeah, still got
long
that
ass
fucking
blonde
hair.
Yeah. But there were 7 minutes left in the show when the bell rings, so I was confident this was not going to a time limit draw either. I wanted Brody versus Gordy so bad, and these assholes made me wait for it.
Yeah.
Kerry almost immediately gets cut off for the heat. The crowd goes banana for Brody's hot tag, where he spent most of his time killing Hayes to death. Gordy took a body slam while Hayes took a beating. The four-way breaks out. Kerry gets shot off the ropes and Hayes drops, but Kerry couldn't jump over him. It's like first day of wrestling school. He couldn't jump over the fallen guy. Unfortunately, it was the finish, so despite fucking it up, they had to go right back to it. Kerry this time jumps over Hayes and jumps into the waiting arms of Bruiser Brody, who then threw Kerry onto Hayes for the win. This match barely went 5 minutes, but the crowd lost their shit for it.
Yeah, short and to the point. They sent the people home happy after Kevin failed to win the world title. It's pretty good for the time given. Like, I feel like if they had 10 minutes, this might have been pretty great.
Now, I should warn you that I hope you liked seeing this American tag team title match because, by and large, the titles are about to get ignored for a while because Brody's here sporadic, but the tag team titles aren't really his main focus. Like him and Kerry do have occasional matches between him here in September, but after September, he doesn't come back to World Class until 1985. And by then, they have long since forgotten that Brody and Kerry were tag team champions.
Yeah,
And
I think that happens at other times too with these titles.
I believe, and we'll get to it, but I believe they do a phantom title change. Because, Brody's...
In 85, they do a vacancy with the Midnight and Fantastics, and then it just stays vacant for 3 months.
Interesting. Maybe we'll eventually find out what happened to the Mid-South Louisiana title that Mr. Wrestling 2 won and then immediately forgot that it existed. Actually, his was the Mississippi title.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was Star Wars. And ultimately, I thought this was a good show. It was certainly a lot different than our normal weekly show, especially with some of the weird randomness that we've seen on this show.
The weird randomness was my favorite part.
Oh, yeah. And
no, it was a good time.
And I'll be honest, we're not going to get it, but I really want Brody versus Gordy one-on-one.
I want Brody versus Kamala.
That we might get some, but unfortunately, I don't think it's happening on World Class anytime soon.
Gordy ever wrestled Brody in Japan or something?
Oh, I'm sure, but yeah. I both would be surprised and wouldn't be surprised. Can you... Yeah. The story of Brody is just like so fucked up, and it's like it's sad that, when you hear all the stories that even before, Brody got murdered to death, or it's like he was difficult to work with, but it's like, was he really any more difficult than anybody else with Japanese commitments who couldn't do jobs in America? Like,
he bled to death in a dirty bathroom.
Yeah. The Road Warriors couldn't do jobs for years, and nobody murdered them in the bathroom.
See a motherfucker try.
Well, they may have never met Jose Gonzalez.
Hawk might have killed that whole fucking territory.
And not in the sense of killing the territory that, the crowd doesn't show up anymore, but killing the territory.
No, killed all the heels in the territory.
Yes. I figured that's what they were trying to do when we booked against the fucking Crusher. It's like, Vern could not have thought that the Crusher was going to do a whole lot of bumping.
Somebody's going
But-
to have to.
So somehow, not only have we gone an hour and 20 minutes or so, we have managed to mostly stay on topic.
And God for small miracles.
I know. I think we need to stop trying to be professional here because, this is, I don't know if this is for us or not.
Never going to
But-
catch me trying to be professional.
Well, so that does it for 100 episodes of Something Else, even though, like I said, if you include the bonus shows and the preview show and the Smoky Mountain show, I'm really at like 170. But fuck that. We're at 100. But before we go, did you want to say anything else to the little people out there, Trey, who helped make us 100?
All the little people out there, I wish you good luck with your personal growth.
All right. And until tomorrow, when Cindy and I are back for 101, and next Tuesday, when Trey and I are going to double up on Mid-South, I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye.